And just allow yourself to take a few breaths. Always comes back to the breath. Always comes back to realigning, rebalancing, and reharmonizing of the self. So take these next few moments to do just that. Use the breath as the tool and as the path for a deeper sense of presence and harmony. With each breath in, feel that you are being nourished, grounded. With each breath out, feel that you are manifesting strength and presence, compassion. Breathing in and breathing out. On your next exhale, draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Taking a breath in. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upama Shravastamam Jyestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanuti Besidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajini Vati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagmam Nova Chamushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And gently resting the hands down, fluttering the eyes open. And so just as a reminder, the Wisdom Circle sessions are recorded, and then they're posted up on our Spreaker page and usually on YouTube as well. So when the time comes, if you have a question or a reflection and you do not want your voice to be recorded, just say so, and I'll pause it. And that way you can feel safe in whatever it is that you would like to share or ask. So today I thought we would talk about the idea that there's some kind of material perfection to things. And I have a friend in India, a wonderful gentleman named Vijish, and every day he sends me little bits of scripture, and he's like, Swamini ji, if you can use them, use them. It's just my service. It's just a reminder to myself and then just an offering. And so I said, well, feel free to send them. Of course, absolutely. And so today, this is what he sent me. So in the Sanskrit, it's dṛṣṭaṁ kimapi loke'sminna nirdoṣaṁ na nirgūṇam āvṛṇudhvamato doṣānvivṛṇudhvaṁ guṇāṇ budhāḥ. And translated, it states, in this world, we could find nothing that is entirely without defects. Similarly, there can be nothing that is without a positive quality. Therefore, do all that is in your capacity to reduce or repair whatever defects are found in the good things, and at the same time work hard to remove the defects that are noticed in things which are predominantly bad. And so this is our path in life, is to know the difference between the thing that is good, the thing that has a defect, and how to maneuver that, how to to walk through life knowing that everything has a defective quality, everything has a positive quality, and not getting stuck in this idea that it's one or the other. And now, in the world especially, I think there is a lot of need for this. Because if we look at the happenings in the world today from only the place of defect, then we will be crushed. We will lose our inspiration. We will lose our hope. We will lose our creativity and our creative impulse. We will lose our ability to hear the calling for unity, because we will eventually not see the purpose to it. So it's especially important in difficult times to see and to know that everything has defect and everything has some kind of perfection to it as well. Everything has good and bad. Now, in yoga, there's a concept called karma. And in the modern world, people oftentimes say karma is a, capital B, whatever, blah, 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 female dog. Okay. Yeah. And I was, when I hear that, I laugh. I'm like, karma is not a payback system, because there's no way for us to know all of the negative or the positive that will come from a particular situation. There's no way for us to know. So instead of looking at karma as this payback system, or karma as, a bitch, right? As people say, we look at karma and we say, karma is a process of reconciling the disharmonies within ourselves through the experience of life, whatever life brings us. You could hit somebody and then think, well, karmically, that means somebody's going to hit me back at some point in time. I punched, so someone's going to punch me. But no, what if instead of the negative thing, what if something super positive came to you as a result? Like something that was so powerfully moving to you, you had no choice but to look into the face of kindness, recognize the violence of your own behavior and resolve it. What if in this life, somebody is so greedy and they don't give to anybody or any organization, or they walk past the homeless and the hungry and they laugh, and so people would say, well, in the next life may they be born into poverty. But what if in the next life they're born into a situation where they are confronted with their own heart and their own heart's longing to be of service to those in need. And they're given in their next life the ability to actually answer that call rather than ignore it. So this is what we want, right? This is what we want. We don't want people punished necessarily, right? That's not what we really want. What we want is people aligned. We want people to heal, to see the truth of themselves, and to correct whatever can be corrected, and to emphasize whatever can be emphasized in a positive way. But in order for us to be able to even move close to that statement, we need to recognize that everything has a darkness and a light. Everything has a good aspect and a negative aspect. Everything has a perfection and a defect. And there's no exception to that rule. Now, this doesn't mean that you run out of here today and you go running up to people that you have issues with and, situations that are difficult, and you're like, I know the answer now. No. We have to spend time. There's a process, right? There's a process to all of this. So the first thing that we need to do is to sit with this idea that there's defect and perfection in everything, and to actually start looking at it, and resolving in our mind those areas where we don't want to see it. So let's say that tomorrow you have a beautiful day planned. You're going to go out hiking at the park with some friends you haven't seen in a while. You're going to take them to your most favorite restaurant, and then you're going to take them to your favorite ice cream parlor for dessert. And then you're going to take them to a movie that you've been really wanting to see so that you can share this beautiful day with your friends. You wake up in the morning and it's a torrential downpour. Your favorite restaurant just closed. They're out of ice cream. And the movie theater, all the employees quit. One might sit there and go, what the heck is going on? It would be very easy in that situation to see all the defects, right? What are some of the positives, though? What are some of the perfections of that situation? Thoughts?
We need the rain.
We need the rain. We do. And do we need the rain, people living locally? Oh, yes, we do, right? I mean, Neversink Mountain just basically burned down. We need the rain. What are other positives in that situation?
We get to check out a different restaurant.
We get to check out a different restaurant. We get to have a new experience with this beautiful community of people that we love so much. What's another positive? Another perfection? What do we ourselves get to do?
Be with your friends.
You get to just be with your friends. Absolutely, without an agenda, without a set idea, an inflexible idea of how it should be, right? What else do we get to do?
Wake up.
What was that?
You get to wake up.
You get to wake up. That's a huge one. Absolutely. What else do we get to do?
You're now going to learn from your friends, maybe, because they're going to have ideas, whereas it was all your ideas.
Absolutely. You're going to learn how to be part of a community and to hear other great ideas and how they might play out. Right, completely. So you're going to get out of maybe your comfort zone and learn about your creativity, learn about connection, learn about community, learn about the difficulty of it, learn about the ease of it. You're going to learn. That's what you're going to do. You're going to learn. You're going to learn appreciation. You're going to learn gratitude. You're going to learn simplicity. And you might learn a little bit about difficulty too. Who knows? But inevitably in this life, you will. Inevitably in this life, you will learn about the simplicity. You will learn about the complex. You will learn about the difficulty. You will learn how to resolve that which you can resolve, which you're willing to resolve. But it's all process. So the first thing that we need to do in this is to sit and to look at life and to look at those areas of life where we're not willing to see that there is both defect and perfection, dark and light, good and not so good, and bad in some instances, where we're only willing to see one side of things. And then the second thing that we need to do, once we're getting comfortable with that envisioning, with that recognition, then we need to investigate how it's affecting us. How does it affect me when I don't see that there is light as well as darkness, or there is darkness as well as light? Because some of us go to the opposite side, right? Some of us go to the everything is unicorns and sparkles, and some of us are so hyper positive, and some of us are so not. But it's the middle road, as the Buddha would say, right? Everything is the middle road. So now we need to look at how do our tendencies in our worldview impact us, and how we behave, how we live our life, how we experience fear, love, friendship, how we view strangers, how we view family, how we have hope or none. We have to investigate how it impacts us and come to understand that impact at least a little bit. And then after understanding that impact comes a really hard part. Because once we start to understand a little bit more about our own behavior, we then have to learn how to take responsibility. And it's another level of responsibility. And it's a really uncomfortable level. Because it is a level of responsibility that I often describe as radical responsibility. That this is my life, my behavior, and no matter what happens outside of me, which I can't control, I have 100% control over my own mindset. I have control over the way I deal with things. Initially, I might not have, because there is this little period of time when a shock happens that your nervous system is actually completely responsible for what you feel, for how you react. But your nervous system condition is your responsibility. So in class earlier, I said if you practice 1 time a week, make it 5 or 25, If you practice 5 times a week, make it 100 times a week. Just practice. Why? Why do yoga teachers say that all the time? Why do they emphasize practice, practice, practice? 1 time a week is not enough. Because it will give you a little tiny benefit that day, maybe an hour or 2 after class. Any of you ever, now because we all know that you all practice at least 5 times a week now. Okay. But remember that time when you only practiced once a week? Did you ever leave class feeling so good, and then 15 minutes down the road, somebody cut you off, took your parking spot, a phone call came, and there goes the bliss, right? So you got this much of a benefit. But if you practiced every day, and maybe even multiple times every day, that benefit would be extrapolated multiple times. And then your nervous system would be in a situation, in a condition, where whatever shock comes, yes, there's still going to be a nervous system reaction, but it's not going to be frazzled. It's not going to be as intense. You're going to be able to breathe a little bit more, to be a little bit more, to have a little bit more clarity, or maybe a lot more clarity. So the practice is part of that radical responsibility. We have to come into our practice. And practice isn't just on the yoga mat. That's only a little part of it. Definitely get on the yoga mat, because that helps to work out the physical tension and the misunderstanding that we have about our own physical body and our own energy. But it's also the practice of self-study, about constantly looking with honesty and sincerity and humility in the mirror and saying, so, what kind of trouble are you up to today? What are your tendencies today? In what ways have you been violent? In what ways have you been harmful? In what ways have you been kind? In what ways have you been generous? In what ways have you been greedy and jealous? In what ways have you been? In what ways? And then acknowledging those tendencies, and not just acknowledging them, but also working to change them. And it's not easy. That's hard. Very hard to take radical responsibility for your own self. But what happens when you do is something quite beautiful. When you take radical responsibility for your own self, nobody can steal your happiness. Nobody can steal your sorrow. Nobody can steal your joy, your peace. Nobody can steal your grief. Nobody can steal your opportunity to have the full experience of this life as you choose to have it, because it is your choice as part of your own radical self-responsibility. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be people out there trying to. Of course there are. That's part of the material world we live in. But consider it kind of like a shield, right? When your nervous system is in a healthy place, and by healthy, I don't mean it's just always peaceful. I mean it reacts appropriately to a situation. When your nervous system is in a healthy place, when you are full of your practice, and when you are studying your own behavior and taking responsibility for it, it's like a shield, a protective shield. And other people's insults, words, accusations, threats even, have a more difficult time permeating that shield, because you will have discovered a greater truth about your own self. You will have discovered that their words belong to them Your words belong to you. Their actions belong to them. Your actions belong to you. And so instead of trying to take over their actions, you pick up your own. You become activated spiritually to walk the path in this life that you are meant to walk, which is a path ultimately of service. It is a path of devotion. It is a path of self-study and realization. It's a very humbling path, but it's also a beautiful, joyful path that's also full of tears. It's full of difficulty. I'm not going to bullshit you. It is. It ain't easy. People go out there and they're like, oh, spirituality, woo, woo, woo. It's like, yeah, right, okay. Not real. If anybody ever tells you, follow this path and your life will be perfect, run in the other direction, because that is not true. What happens right now in most people's lives is that they shirk responsibility. They don't know they're doing it. They're not sitting there saying, well, I'm not going to take responsibility for this. They don't even know. But that's what they're doing. They're shirking the responsibility that could lead them to freedom. Because when we shirk the responsibility of our own actions, our own thoughts, our own intentions, then what are we doing? We're giving control away. We're saying, okay, well then you who I don't trust, you who I don't like, you who whatever, you can have the control. You can have the responsibility. And then they'll do whatever they want to do. But when you take that control back, when you take that responsibility, you're saying, I want absolute freedom within myself. I'm not talking about the human-made, really, really defective world, within yourself. And when you know about the freedom within yourself, then you walk through the human-made world differently. And you recognize that there are a lot of things that you cannot change. There are a lot of things that are going to happen whether you want them to or not. And since you cannot change the things that you cannot change, does this sound like a poem, right? Then you will start to see more clearly where you can make a difference. And that is where you go. So today's world, from my perspective, and this is my opinion, today's world, we're needed with the vulnerable communities. We're needed with those communities who are being affected. We're needed to safeguard and to support and to just be present to the tears, to the irritation, to the anger, to just be present to it. We don't have to be the anger. If you're angry, that's fine. But don't let the anger be the cloak that you wear that hides the other part of you. Because the other part of you is actually more of what's needed right now. There's enough anger to go around for everybody. But you know what there's not enough of? There's not enough kindness. There's not enough love. There's not enough support. There's not enough solidarity. There's not enough of, this is my shoulder for you to put your head on. When you're tired, when you're fatigued, when you're tired, when you're crying, when you need someone, this is my ear to listen to whatever you have to say without me trying to fix anything. There's not enough of that. There's just a bunch of attitudes flying around and opinions about things. And that's okay, because that's the world. But that's like looking at life and saying, that's all we're capable of. Do any of you think that that's all we're capable of? Raise your hands if you do. Right? That's not all we're capable of. We're capable of so much more. We are capable of being present for each other. We are capable of showing up for each other. In the most difficult, darkest of times, we are capable of showing up for each other. And we are capable of showing up for ourselves. But in order to do that, in order to have the strength and the resiliency and the wherewithal to do that, what do you have to do? You have to accept radical personal responsibility. You need to tone your nervous system. You need to be able to see clearly where it is that you're needed. you need to become strong, courageous, grounded, patient, kind, compassionate, creative, and willing to be in community. We've had, I don't even know, like, what would you say, a gazillion whammies over the past, 10 years. Like, we've just had so many things happen in this world that are just, mind-boggling, between wars, between elections, between shutdowns, between illnesses in the world, just all kinds of things going on in the world, right? And I don't know if you've all noticed it, but I have, that people are tired. And where people used to be really resilient and more energetic and I'm not sure about the community part of it, but they definitely were more in community before. Since the shutdown, it's been less and less and less and less and less. And now a lot of times people find their community online, which is fine, but it's limited because there's no interpersonal responsibility there. There is no interpersonal responsibility there. There's no responsibility there at all, actually. But when you show up in person, there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility for you to either embrace or deflect. There's a responsibility. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the one additional thing that you need to be is willing to be in community, truly in community. So that if you want to go and work with a local population, LGBTQ or whoever it happens to be, you got to go there. You can't just message them online and be done with it. You got to be there. You got to be a face in the crowd, a voice lifted, a hand held, a shoulder leaned on, a heart with other radiant hearts. You got to be there. And that's where our biggest challenge, I think, lies right now, is number one, cultivating the wherewithal, the energy, the insight necessary to show up. To show up. There was a really interesting conversation online yesterday, and they were talking about how everything is so very divided right now, very, very divided. And even though so many of us are still of like mind in certain ways, we just can't even seem to talk. Nobody even wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say the word election, Yeah. But not too long ago, something pretty miraculous happened. There was a movement, and it was for women's rights. It was in honor of women's rights. And everybody, men and women, went out and bought these pussycat hats. And it was the biggest march in Washington, D.C. that there had ever been. And everybody came together in community. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? I don't know where they are. But they're needed now. They're needed now, maybe even more than they were needed then. They're needed now. You're needed now. So this beautiful verse is telling us a more beneficial and a wiser way to view the world, to view our life, to view our situations, is to recognize that it's not all good, it's not all bad. There's good and there's bad in everything. There's light and there's dark in everything. That includes us. So the honesty that we can walk forward with that understanding, the honesty that provokes in us, gives us the strength and the wherewithal to have a clearer worldview. And that clearer worldview gives us the ability to know where we're needed. And then our personal sadhana, our practice, our spiritual practice gives us the strength necessary to go be where we're needed, to do that work. But these things are very disjointed these days. They're very disjointed. People want their yoga online. It's fine. It is. A little disheartening though. I did not jump on that bandwagon. Everybody said, oh, just do yoga classes online. I'm like, I don't want to, What we did do was, for the shutdown, we did all other types of spiritual teachings online. We were there for the togetherness of it as much as we could be. And so every single night, just about, I think, we had programs online, in resiliency and in isolation, and how to not feel so isolated, and how to stay healthy in difficult times, and how to work with your grief and all these other things. Meditation also, because meditation is conducive to that. Meditation is conducive to being online, because meditation is when you go inside of yourself anyway, right? So meditation would be okay being instructed online. But something like a yoga class, where there's really supposed to be kind of a teacher-student interaction. That's just my opinion. But anyway, so with that being said, it looks like we might do some online classes next year. I know. I was so resistant to it. And I'm like, I can't just look at it and say it's all bad. I can't do what I just said not to do, right? I have to look at it and say, well, there's some good to it somewhere. And there is, there definitely is. And, so a little late getting onto that game, but, it's okay. It'll be what it'll be. Any questions or reflections so far? Any questions, Lena?
I think you touched on it already, but just ask you to expound a little bit more. Pick any topic. I'm a project manager in IT in corporate America, and since the pandemic, or prior to the pandemic, there was much more collaboration, and there was like, okay, exchange of ideas, okay, tell me more, blah blah blah. But now coming back, it's like, no, I'm over here, you're over there, and it's just it's very limited. And I see it in corporate America. But I was at a meditation yesterday, and I heard a teacher saying it, and I heard different walks of life are starting to kind of come to this same point where there isn't let's talk more, let's collaborate, and let's eventually come to this agreeable path. And I see it on my projects, I see it in my teams, and I'm like, what is this? How do we get, the question is, if you could explain a little bit more on how do we get people talking more and, kind of moving closer?
Absolutely. I think it's a great, great question. And it's most definitely one that across the board needs to be asked. The difficulty is that given enough trauma, an individual will become satisfied with less. They'll become satisfied with the minimal amount possible. They'll become lethargic. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Lethargic. And so their sense of inspiration, they don't remember. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. They don't. Do you remember? You remember being excited and being creative and being, like looking forward to the work and getting the project planned and then completing the project and seeing it come to its fruition. You remember that. Do you work with all the same people that you worked with before?
Some do. Some teams, some part of it, yeah, but some like
yeah. So there's a couple of things at play here. So first of all, the people who you did work with before, what percentage of them share in the enthusiasm? Very small percentage. Trauma. Okay? So trauma is the number one impactor. So it's a number one influence that reduces inspiration, reduces creative outlook, reduces the ability to see something and to get excited about it. Because trauma has as its cohort depression. And depression, while many people are very good at hiding it, is most definitely present in a very large portion of the population right now. So for the people who you worked with before, when you are trying to collaborate with them, number one, recognize that you're trying to collaborate with a familiar entity that you're holding to a standard of the past. They might no longer be capable of that in their current condition of traumatized. So I'm going to stop there with that for just a moment and go, now, the other people who are new, you don't know what they were like before. What age bracket are they? Are they like 30 and under, 30 and over, some combination of that?
Yeah, between, I guess, some are out of college and some are like, maybe 30s, 40s.
So some just being out of college, young people who lived through the pandemic, in their kind of younger developmental years, saw the world in a different way than the way that you came into your career, in a world that was booming and starving for ideas and just really open to that. These individuals are coming into their career online with a different approach, a different understanding. So that's hard to reconcile. Now, both of them, I think it's really important nowadays for organizations, businesses, and corporations to acknowledge mental health. And that to acknowledge mental health has something to do with productivity. It has actually a lot to do with it. And to talk openly about it and to stop having it be such a stigma. Talk openly about mental health, talk openly about depression, talk openly about the impact of all of these traumatizations that everybody has been going through for the past 10 years. The second thing is that there has to be a leader. Even though we kind of exist in a world right now where, there's a sentiment of everybody is a leader. I'm going to differ with that and tell you everybody is not a leader. Everybody is not a leader. We need to have a bona fide leader. We need to have a person who's going to come in and set the boundaries, and who's going to come in, not set the boundaries in a cold, hard way. That's like in yoga, we have tapas, and tapas is defined as discipline. And so many teachers talk about discipline. But I put a word in front of discipline, and that word is compassionate. It's compassionate discipline. It's the type of individual who can put a firm boundary in place, but do it in such a way that it's a support, not a detriment. And so that's a skill that leaders need to cultivate within themselves, is the ability to put in boundaries in a compassionately disciplined way, and those boundaries have very little sway. Now, what could those boundaries be for project management? Well, everybody has to come to the table with one idea. One idea. And everybody has to come to the table, but which is a good one, right? So everybody has to come to the table. They got to come to the table with at least one contributing idea. And if you don't have that contributing idea, if you weren't able to come up with a contributing idea, then let's talk about why. Let's talk about enthusiasm. Let's talk about what is it that excites you about this. Like, remember, like in the early days of like Tony Robbins before he was creepy, right? But that he would talk like that, wouldn't he? He would be like, let's talk about why you can't be enthusiastic. Let's talk about that. Why don't you feel this way? And get the ball rolling for communication, because everybody has gotten so accustomed to shutting up, to shutting down, that they don't know how to open up. And when they do, they feel weird and awkward and out of their element because they're used to not. Now, that's not everybody, but it is a large portion of the society right now, for sure.
And can I say this one
Yeah.
thing? I was talking about my team, right? I was saying how businesses lack, cooperation and movement and like just let's do our job. And the teacher was sharing how her students were doing the same thing. I said, you sound like you're talking about my team. You're talking about adults. She's talking about like middle school kids.
Yeah.
And I thought that was hilarious.
Absolutely.
There are teachers in the room, you might appreciate that.
It's across the board. It really is. And the age doesn't make a difference. But the age does define for you the tools that you can go to them with and how to approach them. But really, yeah, it's the same across the board. The same across the board. So and if we do want to adhere to this idea that everybody is a leader, then be the leader of enthusiasm. Not in a fake way, but in a way that just talks about it. Like even its absence. That is not afraid to ask the hard questions. Somebody said to me recently, she asked me, she said, you can talk to anybody. Like, where'd you learn that? And I said, it's not that I learned it somewhere. It's that I'm willing to ask difficult questions and to listen to the answers, even if I don't agree with what's being said. I'm willing to listen to the answers, and I'm willing to ask the difficult questions. And I'm willing to ask them in a way that doesn't put the other person on a defensive, which nowadays is really difficult, by the way. But if you're talking about enthusiasm, it's like you come into your meeting and you go, okay, so today our meeting is going to have a theme. Oh, so I worked with this agency over in New Jersey many years ago. They were a crisis intervention agency for families at risk. And this was a private organization who was state mandated. And they were tied into the state agency. And they also had other smaller organizations that were involved as well. And so they would have state mandated meetings with this organization, the state agency, and then one or two of these smaller, like mom and pop organizations that contributed as well. And so I was their yoga therapist, and I would be sent out to work with the families in crisis all the time. And they came to me, the president came to me and said, do you think that you could do a talk for the group? Because we have an issue, and you seem to be really good at crisis intervention, and so, I think we have a crisis. I said, okay, well, what's your crisis? She goes, communication. Nobody wants to talk to each other. The state agency is saying it's your fault. Our people are saying it's not our fault, it's their fault. The little mom and pop are frustrated, and they're like, it's not our fault, it's everybody else's fault. How do we get people on the same page? And I said, let's have a conference. When's your next meeting? I'll come. You can tell them I'm coming if you want to, but you could also surprise them. And a lot of their people knew me already. So the reason I'm going to get to the reason why I'm sharing this story with you, because you got to think outside the box when you want to motivate people. So I go into this meeting, and they do all know that they're going to have a guest speaker, but they have no idea what it's about. And I go in and I introduce myself, and I had a little team of people with me to support, because there were probably 75 people in this meeting. And so I went in and I introduced myself, and I said, so right away we're just going to all stand up. And so everybody stood up. Actually, let's stand up. Let's stand up. And then just take your arms overhead for a moment, and just lengthen your whole body, and maybe yawn a little bit, bend to one side, bend to the other side. Yeah. And now, turn and face somebody you don't know. You don't know. Yeah. And do we have any extras in the back? Lena, do you have somebody you're with? Over here? Okay, so you can look at me. Oh, do you have somebody? Okay, so you can face them. Okay. So now, you're just going to look at the person. You're just going to gaze right into their eyes. Don't look at their face or their clothes or anything else. Just look into the eyes. And look into the darkest part of the eye. So look into the pupil. Just keep staring in there. And now have a wish for this person to know that you mean them no harm. Have an intention for this person to know that you are a friendly face, that you are interested in knowing them, that you would like to have a conversation with them about this project, about work, about the role that they play, that you respect the role that they play. And now we're going to talk to each other, but we're going to say something very specific, and we're all going to say it at the same time, and you all already know this. So say after me. Getting to know you.
Getting to know you.
Getting to know all about you.
Getting to know all about you.
Right, exactly. And now you can stop. So I brought them through that song. Literally. And that's exactly what they did. They laughed and they were like, and so then the next part of it was, now that person that you don't know, now ask them what role they play and how enthusiastic they feel about that role. And then the other person asked the same question. And now they're starting to cohese. They're starting to coalesce, come together, because now they understand, number one, enthusiasm is lacking. Although they do still feel it, they don't express it so much. Number two, frustration is universal. And they might not even know, like maybe you're the problem solver in the department that I should be going to instead of going to this other person who, that's not their job. Now they get to know each other. They get to understand a little bit. And so I said to them, they should do that exercise at the beginning of every meeting. They don't have to sing, but they should. You can all sit down. So, but do you see, like thinking out of the box, talking to people, getting to know them, but it being willing to be the person to break the ice. So it was not easy to get up in front of 75 corporate suits, and well, let's just say 70 corporate suits and 5 normally dressed individuals, and to have them sing that song, because they all looked at me like I was nuts initially, and I said, no, you use your voice, use your big words, not mine. You do it. And then they did. And they said that it was one of the most effective exercises that they had ever done in communication. So there's lots of different ways that you can open them up, but have a theme for every single meeting. And then start asking them what theme they want to have. You set them first. So you set them like the first 3 times or something. And then start saying, okay, what theme do we have next time? Get them invested in the theming of it. And then that's going to help to build enthusiasm, because then they start to look forward to different ways to express what needs to be expressed, including the project. Now, I know a lot of organizations and corporations have guidelines for the way meetings are held and that type of thing, but there's always a little bit of wiggle room to get people excited again. Now, it just so happens, I'm going to finish that story and just tell you the funniest part of it. So there's 75 people in this room, and my husband was one of the people on my team, that I brought with me, and so my team members were with certain individuals who was teamed up with them, trying to be the example of how to do this, and so my husband was matched up with this woman, and so at the end of it, she's talking to her group, and she goes, "Oh, that man that I was doing that exercise with, he had the most dreamy eyes. He was just the nicest person. My heart was fluttering." And one of my other yoga therapists was walking past and heard her and said, "That's Sudha's husband." And she went, "Oh no!" And everybody started laughing, and I said, "I am not offended at all. He does have dreamy eyes, and my heart flutters every time I look into them too. So you're fine." And Ed was like all red in the face, But yeah. So we need to be brave, right? We need to be brave in our vision and bold in our applications. We need to remember the things that matter. And that we live in a different world now than we did 10 years ago. Definitely. We live in a different world now than we did 6 years ago. And if we want to begin to reignite some of the fervor that we felt before, then we need to step into the role of lighting it on fire and lighting the candle, and letting people hear a voice of enthusiasm, but a strong voice of enthusiasm. So it's not just like woo-woo stuff, happy, joy. It's purposeful. And the thing that's really great is that you let them know it's purposeful. Like, I didn't tell them, okay, you're doing this exercise just so I can break the ice here and we can all talk. No, what I said to them was, what did you learn about each other because you came out of your defensiveness? And then had them give examples. And they learned, one person actually said, well, I learned that I've been talking to the wrong person the whole time, that I should be going to this person over here because this is actually her job. And I was like, well, okay, great. So now you've got some time that you can reclaim. You've got some open communication now with this individual that you can step into, So you're letting them know that, yeah, it is fun and it builds enthusiasm, but it's purposeful, very purposeful. And then there's conscious communication also. And conscious communication exercises are fantastic too. And maybe we'll go into them at another point in time. But there's lots of tools out there, lots and lots of tools in order to support this. And each one of you have the ability to do so. Absolutely. And if we want this world to become healthier, if we want this world to become less dreadful, less fearful, if we want to be less fearful, then we need to do this work. This is the work we need to do. We need to get out into the world, yeah?
You talk about masculine and feminine, I feel like the election, we were going towards a feminine leader, and that was a really good thing in my mind. And now it's a push more towards, we'll say, toxic masculinity. I wanted to be a part of moving divine masculine and divine feminine forward, but it seems further and further away at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, good. Just doing a time check, make sure how deep I can go into this right now. So let's just take that apart for a moment and say there's divine masculine and divine feminine, and there's masculine and feminine. Divine masculine is not toxic. Divine feminine is not toxic. It's divine. Masculine can be toxic or healthy. Feminine can be toxic or healthy. So these are two different things that we're talking about, right? The divine feminine in all beings everywhere is never toxic. It's always based on nurturance, love, compassion, creativity, unity, caring, grief, a little bit of mystery. It's those kinds of things that we associate with femininity. The divine masculine in all beings, because it's in all beings everywhere, is strength, it's courage, it's logic, it's discernment. It's all those things that we do have a tendency to associate with the masculine, but it belonged to the divine masculine first, and what we associate with feminine belong to the divine feminine first. And in the divine masculine and divine feminine, they are light. They're dark, but not like what we didn't. When we claimed ownership over those qualities, that's when they became toxic. Because in our humanness, we're constantly looking for ways to get our point across, to justify ourselves, to get what we want out of this life, to be seen a certain way, to get power, popularity, money, whatever. And so these qualities tend to be exploited by human beings, but they're never exploited by divinity. They don't have to be, because divinity has everything already. Now, what about this toxic masculinity and this femininity in the world today? Well, so the masculine has a problem, and the problem is strength, like physical kind of strength, that if it gets much stronger, it's going to kill itself. So think about an oak tree. An oak tree has a very masculine quality to it because it's a strong tree. It has a great amount of strength. It's got roots that dig deep into the ground. It's one of the most durable trees. Why is it durable? It's durable because of its feminine qualities, the inclusion of the feminine qualities, because there's some moisture in there. There's also some softness in addition to the strength. There's flexibility in addition to the solid nature of the tree, right? So it's the optimal balance of masculine and feminine that give the oak tree its vitality. If you take the feminine out, then all you have is strength. And some of you have done this with me, make a fist. Squeeze. And just keep squeezing until I tell you not to anymore. But squeeze really hard. If you did that for an hour or two, your hand would just be, it would hurt. The circulation would slow down. Your fingers would go numb. You would get tired. Release it. Yeah. Now, the oak tree, if it loses its moisture, if it loses all of those qualities that we think are more of a feminine nature, it becomes brittle. And it may appear strong, but it is actually so weak that the simplest wind could knock it over, could snap it right in half. We actually had a big some big cedar tree over here that happened to. It lost all of its feminine quality. All that remained was the trunk of the tree and the branches, and a little windstorm came through and knocked the thing right over. And its trunk was literally like huge. So we need to understand that the chasm that exists between the feminine and the masculine is a human-made chasm, where the masculine has become hyper aware of its own strength and it has fallen in love with it to the detriment of the feminine. Does that make some sense? Mm-hmm. Now the feminine in response has done what? Well, she hasn't motivated herself because she's not weak. She's strong. Feminine is strong. But she hasn't motivated herself to respond. Now, when everybody went out and bought the pussycat hats, I will be very honest with you, I did not buy one. Not because I didn't appreciate the movement, but because I figured it was going to be short-lived. It was it was going to be short-lived. Because there was a lot of this, but there was no grounding. Like, there was no plan. What do we do next? How do we continue this forward? If there had been, maybe we would have a female president right now, or in January. But the hype, the ground swelling was temporary in nature, and that is the feminine's greatest problem: is no boundaries, too fluid of boundaries, too easily, shiny thing, shiny thing. I mean, give a project to a woman and it will get done. Absolutely, because women are very focused like that. However, when it comes to matters of the heart, it goes out the window, And of course, take these things with a grain of salt, because it's not true for every woman or every man. But in generalities, this is the way that the world is in our humanness. So what happens is the tree continues to look like it's strong. And people, including the feminine, tend to look at that strength, and after having had 10 years of traumatization, they think that they want that strength. But what they don't know is that there's nothing supporting that strength. It's a facade. It's a masculine facade. Now, are they going to come to know that? Oh, yeah. Absolutely, by way of nature. And this is not a Republican Democrat thing. This is not a Trump Kamala thing. This is a nature thing. That which builds up comes back down. It's cyclical, right? Absolutely. There's some pain in the meantime, but it's cyclical. That which becomes strong will eventually become weak. It will happen. But right now, the reason why that appears to be so strong is because everybody who's looking at it thinks it is. They think it is. And so they're going to call it toxic masculinity. And it is toxic masculinity.
It's the stories that we're telling ourselves.
It is the stories that we're telling ourselves. It is toxic masculinity, absolutely. But we're also toxic. We're in the midst of toxic femininity, whether you're a man or a woman. Unless you're not. Unless you're seeing that there is darkness and light together. There is good and bad together. There is defect and perfection always at the same time. and we keep our hearts and minds focused on that which is good, that which is, it has the potential for meaning, for purpose, for unity, for perfection. And we do the work of that, which takes us, thank you, very nicely, back to the beginning of the conversation, that the work to be done to get us to that point is the radical self-responsibility. I will not be a toxic influence walking through the world. That's my decision. Some people may disagree with me, but I'm going to work very hard in my own heart, my mind, and in my life to not be a toxic influence, either masculine or feminine. And that's what we need to say to ourselves. This is my decision, and I am going to adjust my life accordingly, adjust my behavior accordingly. And it's not about shutting people out, which we oftentimes think it is. We oftentimes think, well, if I shut enough of these people out, then I don't have to deal with it anymore. So how many of you, if you feel comfortable raising your hands, how many of you have shut people out recently? Right? Has it helped? No. That's not the answer. Now, distance might be smart, for sure. Distance might be very smart, and it might also be the safer thing to do. But shutting it out is not the answer, because you cannot shut out the thing that you think has more power than you do. You can't. Because there's a fear there. No matter who the person is, there's a fear. When you look at something that you perceive as being more powerful than you are, better than you are, has more influence than you have, there's immediately two impressions. One is fear and one is envy. And there could be a third, inspiration. But the inspiration tends to take the back seat to the fear and the envy. The inspiration would be to see the thing for what it is and to not make it into some kind of a myth of grand proportions. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Yeah. That was a great question. Thank you. I hope I answered it. I tend to go off on my tangents, but you all know that. Any other questions or reflections? Yeah.
Do you have any practices or things that we can try to do to help cultivate radical responsibility for ourselves, like meditation?
Yeah, meditate. Just do it. First of all, every day, meditate. Sit with yourself every day. If you don't have the discipline to sit with yourself, what other kind of discipline are you willing to adopt? So just even adopting the discipline of sitting alone in concentration every day, because meditation is a level up from concentration. So first we sit in concentration. We focus on our breath, or we count backward, or we picture something in our mind. That's concentration. And the one who becomes skillful in concentration will enter into states of meditation naturally as a result of that. So first thing we have to do is sit with ourselves every day in a state of concentration, and hopefully that will lead to meditation naturally. Then, in addition to that, just look at your life. Ask yourself, not where you can be nicer. There's no need for nice. Nice is a really interesting word. It's not one of my favorite, as many of you know, because nice is a face. You know, nice is like it's an act. Kind. Where are you not kind? That's different. Kindness is having empathy, having compassion, having patience. Where can you be kind or kinder? And where are you being a doormat? Where are you just throwing out your control to others? You know, where are you just giving up on your own self-responsibility and letting other people have it instead? And you rein it back in. Start taking more responsibility for yourself. And that could be as simple as acknowledging the role that you play in arguments, the role that you play in gossip, the role that you play in excuses, the role that you play in procrastination, the role that you play in harmful words, it could be just that. That's the starting place right there. It's not that these people that I'm standing with are gossiping. I'm standing there too. So what role do I play in this? And then recognizing that gossip is not useful. It's actually a waste of your energy. So that's kind of like another thing. Looking at your life, where are you wasting your energy, precious energy, that everybody kind of really needs right now? We all need energy in order to have the wherewithal to make better choices, to make what we call in yoga right choices. But if we're throwing our energy out into every direction, gossip and, 27 podcasts a day and reading the magazine article headlines on the cashier line and getting all irritated over it for nothing because those headlines don't really mean very much. Where's the energy going to come from for inspiration? Where's the energy going to come from for enthusiasm if you've given it all away already? Does that make sense? Yeah, so those are a few places, and that will take you a couple of years, so come back and let me know. It would take everybody a couple of years. It's a lot of work, yeah.
As an instructor, is it your hope when you're teaching in yoga that your students, you're helping them with their mindset? Would you say that you're encouraging concentration or meditation?
Concentration.
That's all concentration.
Yeah, I cannot, nobody, there is not a teacher on this planet that can teach you meditation. Meditation is not teachable. Meditation is a spontaneous experience of peace within one's own self that is undisrupted by something outside. And for most people, it only lasts for about a second or two. For the individual who has a sadhana, who has a yoga asana practice or a chanting practice or a concentration practice where they've acquired some skill because they do it regularly and their nervous system is in a particular condition, that individual will spontaneously experience meditation for longer periods of time. An individual who lives a life of radical self-responsibility, devotion, and service, they very well may walk through life in a meditative state. But meditation is not something that can be taught. So I can't sit here and tell you how to do it. I can tell you the steps to take to strengthen yourself, to prepare yourself to have that experience. But I can't tell you how to do that like I can tell you how to stand on your head. They're two very different things, and there's not a teacher who can tell you that. No, what a teacher will say to you is just sit and be with yourself, and don't be afraid of what you find. And when you can do that, you'll know that you're coming closer. Yeah, it's powerful. It is. So it's concentration in there. It's concentration, it's empathy, it's compassion. It's a willingness to sit with discomfort and to not run away from it. And it's a willingness to also laugh at the process a little bit. Yeah. Great question. Great question. Any others right now before we close? No? Okay, I've gone a little bit over like I always do. But it's okay because they're still serving brunch for those of you who are staying. So let's sit tall. We'll close the eyes. Thank you so much for being here today, for having this conversation. The eyes closed, the hands together in front of the heart. And because ultimately what we truly want is the healing of all beings everywhere, we'll lift our voices in one Om and the All Beings mantra. And take a breath in. Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all so much for being here today. So good to gather with each and every one of you. Welcome again to our newer students. Welcome back, as always, to our existing students. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be brave. Good. Thank you.
What else does he say you